Welcome to Southern Fried Baseball, brought to you by College Baseball Central, bringing you 90 feet closer to the greatest show on dirt. Here are your hosts.
Welcome in, College Baseball Central fans. Another week of Southern Fried Baseball as SEC play kicks off. We're going to have 8 exciting matchups to talk about. It is just going to be me, Jake McKeever, kind of in a vintage Southern Fried Baseball throwback type of episode, as those that have been following along with me kind of remember when I would just do these by myself. It has been about a year since I've done that, so if I get anything wrong, just let me know down in the comments below where you think you disagree. And as always, I'm a pretty open book, and we can talk about anything. There's 4 exciting matchups here that we're going to be talking about. Texas A&M goes up to Norman, Oklahoma. Alabama goes to KPP. Mississippi State goes into their House of Horrors at Baum-Walker up at Arkansas. Tennessee and Georgia square off at Foley. Ole Miss returns to Texas after just being here about a week ago to face those Texas Longhorns. Auburn goes up to Columbia, Missouri, getting probably the worst draw of these Missouris, if you will, as it's still kind of cold up there. LSU goes up to Vandy in kind of the disappointment bowl that we'll talk through. And then South Carolina and Florida is our biggest one-sided matchup, according to College Baseball Insiders. Let's start with that series that really kind of has my attention first. The Texas A&M Aggies go into Norman to take on the Oklahoma Sooners. It is going to be the first time that they have played each other as conference opponents. Last time they played was up in Omaha, where Oklahoma swept them. But these teams are 36-36, so whoever wins this series is going to take the career one. Texas A&M is a team that's been riding really, really high. They've used that pitching that is number one, according to College Baseball Insiders, and really some timely hitting is 27th. Their strength of schedule is 48th. But I think for me, this is really a huge test for the Aggies. I know that they went into Arlington and looked really, really good in 2 of those 3 games. UCLA was, without a doubt, the best team that they have played so far. Kind of exposed them a little bit. I think for me, the thing that I want to see from Texas A&M is really just to kind of get them healthy. I feel like they can sustain an injury from either Chris Hakopian or Wesley Jordan. It feels like they shouldn't have to do it with both of those. Hakopian in the midweek on Tuesday, he was kind of starting to stretch, starting to run a little bit, so maybe that's kind of a good sign. He's dealing with a back issue. The rumor is maybe a herniated disc, but we don't know when his timeline is that he kind of tweaked it. Might have been a fall injury that's kind of been lingering. We really just don't know. And then for Oklahoma, I know for me, I've kind of just been box score watching with them before I kind of went in and did this deep dive after that first week that they had in Arlington. Again, I felt really, really weird after that first week in Arlington that this is probably going to be the best team in the SEC following week 1 as they won 10-3, 10-1, and 12-2 in front of me. And really since then, they've gone completely under the radar. They haven't played the toughest competition. They did play Gonzaga. They did play Santa Clara. And in some of those midweeks, Arizona State, I know that was kind of an anomaly that made everybody kind of wake up a little bit. But I think for me, it's do we continue to see these great starts from Cam Johnson in the Friday night role? I felt like we've been hearing about him for years and years and years if he was going to finally step up and be that Friday guy. At least through 4 starts, he's looked like that guy in every sense of the word. 2.11 ERA, 21 innings pitched, 17 hits, 6 runs with 5 of them allowed. But I think the big one for me is 32 Ks to 5 walks. On many staffs, that would probably be, a frontline, a headline starter. But LJ Merciless in that Saturday role has been almost more phenomenal. 23 innings, only 2 runs allowed, or only 1 run allowed, 34 Ks to 6 base on balls. This is an Aggie team that in that UCLA series, they really stacked bat at bats after bat at bats after bat at bats. But it's also at times where they've had that clutch hitting. So I think it's going to be a knock them down, grind them out series, at least for me. Like I said, on Friday night, we have Shane Sadeo going against Cam Johnson. Saturday, we have Weston Moss going against LJ Merciless. And then on Sunday, it's kind of the 2 biggest surprises for me. Cord Ranger going up against Aiden Sims. You may recall Cord Ranger pitched really, really good against TCU. Really, ever since then, he's pitched really great against Coppin State. But again, it's Coppin State. Santa Clara, they chased him in the 3rd after 65 pitches. I think he's going to have a full workload. Texas A&M, according to College Baseball Insiders, does give them a slight edge over the Oklahoma Sooners, and it's at 52.4 versus 47.6. Let's punch in some of those starting matchups just to see kind of where they differ and if anything kind of changes. Just bear with me as I get these pulled up. With Shane Sadeo and Cam Johnson, they actually give the edge to Texas A&M with a little bit higher odds. It is up at the Dale. They are saying it is going to be a sellout crowd. It's probably going to be the routest that the Dale's been in a long, long time. A&M, it's going to be really interesting to see how they travel. According to the Pick'em series, I have Oklahoma taking 2 of 3. Chris has Texas A&M. And then Andrew has, let me see. He has Texas A&M, Oklahoma. So I am out on my island picking Oklahoma Sooners. I think this is going to be one of the most competitive series. I know for me, if A&M can go in and steal 2 of 3, I feel like at times this year we said, if A&M does X, we'll say this is the team that's better than 2025. If A&M does Y, they're better than the team that's 2025. If they can go up to Oklahoma, take 2 of 3, I think that this is a team that takes that next step. I know I'm super, super early on them. I'm super, super high. I have them at 13th in the nation. This will be what separates a really good team from a great team is when they can go out, take care of a high quality team on the road and really just kind of go in and grind it out. My players to watch from this one is Weston Moss kind of having a bounce back start against Oklahoma. He kind of got rocked a little bit in that UCLA game. Can he kind of take that next step forward? And then for Oklahoma, it's Cord Ranger, similar thing. Can he bounce back against a high quality opponent? Players, I'm going to go with Jackson Willits. He feels like the guy at the top of the order that can kind of get the lineup going. If he's on his game, I think that this is a very, very dangerous Oklahoma lineup. Again, they have a ton of speed. They do a lot of dynamic things with that outfield. But Jackson Willits with that mature approach, I think really kind of takes this Oklahoma offense over the top. And then for Texas A&M, you hear about the Caden Sorrells, you hear about the Gavin Grahovics, but I think for me, I'm going to do kind of a two-parter because I'm not really sure which one it's going to be. But Blake Benderup and Sawyer Farr, both guys have played tremendous in relief. Blake Benderup had 2 homers in the midweek. His thing has always been when they get into SEC play and that talent takes a step up, how he kind of performs. I think if he can have a monster weekend like he had at Vanderbilt a few years ago, actually that was last year, this really kind of limits the damage of missing Hakopian, missing Wesley Jordan, the Baylor transfer. And that really kind of sets A&M up. It's going to be Kellner, Pertita, if they kind of have their freshman moments. Eventually they're going to have them. So you need veteran guys outside of Sorrell and Grahovic to kind of take those next step up. Another guy I want to shout out is Jake Durr. He's been tearing the absolute cover off the ball. He's been a really, really nice surprise for me at least. I know he's a veteran back coming over from Florida Atlantic, but I don't think Texas A&M anticipated that they were going to get these lineups and these ABs from him. And then from Oklahoma, it's Jackson Walk. He had an inside the Parker in the midweek. He's a super, super dynamic guy along with Dason Harris. Probably one of the fastest 1-2 punches in the country. Can Oklahoma, again, take a next step up? I know that everybody was really high on them last year, and then they faded down the stretch. I think that this is a prove-it series for both teams. Let's move on to, I think, another really exciting series. The Alabama Crimson Tide roll up to Kentucky Proud Park to take on and host the Kentucky Wildcats. Both of these teams, I think, are flying super, super under the radar. Kentucky, I know that they don't play the most exciting brand of baseball as they have in years past. And I mean that in a endearing way. They have Jelkin, they have Cleaver at the top of that rotation. And then from there, they can really kind of get going. So there's not as much variance that you're getting with those top 2 guys. And then for Alabama, it's been the Justin LeBron show, I think, all along. I think for me, can Kentucky play into that KPP thing that they need? They've had a ton of up and down stuff. They've really kind of weathered the storm, if you will. Let me pull up what their record is. They sit at 15-2, tied for third most wins in the SEC, along with Oklahoma. And they're doing this without Tyler Bell. Tyler Bell has been injured a big, big chunk of this year. He's hitting .467 despite only playing 5 games. Luke Lawrence has been really, really great in relief, hitting .328 at shortstop. And then Ethan Hindle's taken some high quality at bats too as well. It's really weird because Tyler Bell's a dynamic infielder, glove first guy, but I feel like with some of the stuff that they've been able to do around him, it really does kind of create an exciting lineup. Caden Cloud moving over to third base has been a really nice surprise for them as a freshman, but it'll be really interesting now with Bell back, what they do week in, week out with that lineup, because they kind of have a little bit of a luxury some of these other teams really haven't had. Jelkin's pitching at a 2.53 with 21 innings pitched, 26 Ks, his first ones after missing an entire year due to Tommy John. McKeever right behind them, 14 innings, 8.64 ERA. They've had Nate Harris, who's kind of going to pitch a little bit better than he has. I really do apologize for all these voice cracks, by the way. I'm not really sure what my voice is doing. But I think that that's the one that really kind of how they play this. The lineup's got a ton of punch for me. And then Alabama, I would say that they're probably the most confusing team in the country because they sit at 15-3. They went 2 of 3 in their tournament, demolishing Iowa. They've lost in a run rule fashion to Southern Miss. But if you're going to rank, this is just SEC rankings, Alabama, I'm just so used to saying South Carolina. Alabama has the worst batting average in the SEC. They've had 146 runs. They've benefited from a lot of guys, I guess, getting walks as they lead the SEC. They're second in the SEC behind Oklahoma in walks. And from a pitching staff standpoint, they sit at 13th at 3.82. I think it's one of those ones where we're going to find out a lot about Alabama. I felt like after that Frisco tournament, a lot of the problems that we saw from Alabama were kind of evident. You may recall, while they did win against Oregon State's not as dynamic of a lineup as they've had in years past, and Alabama took them 8-7. They were up really, really big, chasing Zane Adams in the 5th, and then from there the bullpen was kind of shaky with Hagen Banks down the stretch. And then from there, I mean, they've handled business since then, but it's been against Jacksonville State, Alabama State, North Florida last weekend, Troy. So can Alabama take a step up in competition? College Baseball Insiders projects Kentucky to win at 53.2 versus 48.6. Alabama ranks 122nd in SOS, 29th in pitching, according. And I think that just really shows that how dynamic the pitching has been in the SEC this year. For Kentucky, they sit at 200 RPI, a little bit below average, 16th in pitching. So big, big step up. I think KPP is going to play a massive, massive part for me. I think the matchup that I'm the most excited about, and these will be my 2 X factors pitching-wise, is that Ben McKeever versus Zane Adams start. Ben McKeever's been so nails. He almost feels like a second Friday guy throwing on Saturday. Zane Adams is a guy that's flashed Friday night stuff. Remember, he was in the Friday night role last year. But he's really, really up and down. So if they can get a good start out of Zane Adams, save that bullpen for Sunday, I think it kind of flips, in my opinion. Lineups-wise, I think it's got to be Tyler Bell. I know he's kind of the guy that everybody's been circling in that lineup. He's got to have a monster game. He's got to prove why he's one of the best players in the country, and then where they can go from there again if he kind of gets forward for this team. Alabama, I know the one for me that I'm not going to call out and just say Justin LeBron, but I think for me it's Brady, our best hitter coming out from behind the plate. He started 18 games. There was talk about moving him over to be kind of a second baseman. He's, I think, a really, really dynamic lineup for them. He's sneaky fast on the base pass for somebody who's been a catcher his whole SEC career. So I think Brady Neal and Tyler Bell are going to be my 2 X factors for them. Again, it's going to be a really, really exciting series. For the pick'ems, Andrew has Kentucky over Alabama. I have Kentucky over Alabama. Chris has Kentucky over Alabama. We'll have the rest of those with Micah and Nick coming out tomorrow, so I do apologize for that. But I think that those are the guys. Everybody's going with Kentucky. I don't think that this is a sweep. I think that this is another one of those gritty kind of drag-em-out series, in my opinion. Let's move on to probably the headliner of the weekend. The Mississippi State Bulldogs head on up to Baum Walker to take on the Arkansas Razorbacks. For me, it's a tale of 2 teams. And I want to say this. I know that I'm in the Ole Miss jersey, but I'm completely unbiased with them. I feel like Mississippi State has been given just a little bit too much credit for how they've played. And Arkansas, I feel like, is the complete 180, where it's the sky is falling every time Arkansas loses a game. I just want to get up some of the stuff just so I don't get fact checked on a historic. Uh, but if you really recall with Mississippi State, they sit at 15-2. They're 12-0 at home. They looked the best against UCLA. So I think that's why a lot of people are kind of talking about them being the best because they've looked the best against UCLA. Again, they played Southern Miss pretty tough a few weeks back. But if you look at the schedule, and I want to recall what we were talking about the first week, about how Mississippi State didn't really look that good against Hofstra, but they took care of business. That's really all that you needed. They looked really good against Delaware. It feels like they're on cruise control. And for me, it feels like one of those series where the loser of this one is going to feel like the sky is falling, and the winner of this one's probably going to be top 3 or 4 in the country. It's Brian O'Connor's first SEC weekend. I know that he's a veteran coach, but I think going up to Baum Walker the first weekend of the year, I think is just a completely different animal. I did want to okay, yes, it has been a house of horrors for Mississippi State up at Baum Walker. They lost two of 3 up there in 2024. They got swept there in 22. Honestly, Mississippi State has really not played good against Arkansas, period. As they got swept in Starkville in 23, they got swept in Starkville in 21. They got swept in 2019 up at Fayetteville. Honestly, if you're going to go back to the last time that Mississippi State won a series up in Fayetteville, I mean, I've had to scroll a long, long while. 2007, they took 2 of 3. So that's how long it's been since Mississippi State has beaten Arkansas up at Baum Walker. I should say that this feels like the Mississippi State team that's going to be able to do it. Thomas Valanciunas on Saturday has been just absolutely phenomenal. Ryan McPherson's another guy that's looked extremely, extremely well at times. The bullpen's kind of been a wing and a prayer. I know that against the Virginia Tech game where things kind of got weird down the stretch, I don't think that that's what this bullpen's capable of. At least for me, I think it's a really, really talented bullpen. And then for Arkansas, they feel so boom bust that if they get one of these kind of quote-unquote bad Mississippi State bullpen outings, it feels like that's one where they could kind of explode. For as doom and gloom as Arkansas's lineup has been, they ranked 12th in the SEC and hitting at 296, while Mississippi State is first at 354. I know one of the guys posted a graphic. I forget who it was, and I want to say it was Bulldog uniforms, but they had all these Mississippi State guys and all these ridiculous averages. I mean, if you look at this right now, Aiden Teal at 286 is far and away their worst hitter, and I don't even think there's one that's really close. And the flip side of that is Teal's been their most clutch hitter. In that UCLA series, he got a couple big hits against Virginia Tech. Bryce Chance has been phenomenal. Ace Reese is hitting 397 with 25 home runs. I think he's got to add a little bit of that power, so we've seen some of these guys in double digits. But, I mean, if they can get 400 out of Ace Reese, this is a just phenomenal, phenomenal, phenomenal team. It still feels like they're trying to figure stuff out with the lineup. I know that when I was in Arlington, that was one of the things that Brian O'Connor mentioned was just a fight at the back rack with some of these guys. Reach Stallman's hitting 457. They still got to figure out some of the stuff. I mean, Valanciunas, Feitas is hitting 480 for him. They can figure out some of the stuff. I think for me, I'll know a lot about Mississippi State in a good way because we'll see which lineup Brian O'Connor kind of goes with. Because, it's kind of cool, and we've seen stuff with like Jay Johnson and Jake Brown and some of these guys last year where they're sliding stuff in and out. But in my opinion, I think for a lot of the stuff, you got to get guys in rotation, get them on a schedule. So that way, I think that's for me is if we start to see kind of a semblance of what Mississippi State's lineup's really going to look like. As you know, there's a ton of different guys that they can kind of roll through. And then for Arkansas, it's which Arkansas are we actually going to see? Is it the Arkansas that has this mature veteran approach that we saw against Oklahoma State, that we've seen at times in that UT Arlington series? Or is it going to be the one that we saw the second half of that series at Stetson, the one that we saw against Arkansas State? That's the one for me is which Arkansas team is going to show up. I should say this. I said this on our Monday show that I felt like Stetson, once they kind of checked the box that they won the weekend, that they kind of really kind of went into a shell, got really complacent. I don't think those issues are going to kind of happen, in my opinion. But I think for me, it's can DVH start to get production out of these veteran guys that they brought in? I mean, TJ Pompey, he has just been near the bottom in every sense of the word for Arkansas. We talked about all these guys that hit 400 for Mississippi State. That is not TJ Pompey. Him and Nola Souza are both hitting under 200. Brumbaugh, who started at shortstop, hitting under 200. TJ Pompey has 26 Ks. Micah New has 19 Ks. I mean, this is a team that loves to strike out. I know that they have a ton of boom-bust stuff, as they have a lot of guys that can really bang it around the yard. Helfrich has 5 home runs. Cam Kojal has 5 home runs. It's a dynamic lineup when it gets going. The flip side of that is if they don't get going, this lineup's one of those ones where they stack bad AB after bad AB after bad AB. I'm really intrigued, too, to see what they do with Carter Rutenbar, as he's kind of been the catcher. When he was coming in as a true freshman, they've DH'd him a little bit. He's had some really, really high-quality hits. He was one of Chris's kind of shout-out guys last week. They've had him in the DH role. He went 4 for 5. Again, if they can get that out of him, or maybe play him at first with Robinette kind of as a platoon. I know Robinette's hitting 310, but I think they got to get more out of Nolan Souza. I know that he was dealing with an injury. I know that he had kind of a weird start where he was sitting in the leadoff spot DHing, but I think that they just need to figure out what this lineup is. It feels like they have a lot of guys that can DH and not really a lot of guys that are great fielders. And they're great fielders. Carson Brumbaugh isn't really hitting at any kind of level that they would have liked. They've moved TJ Pompey over there, but again, he's really not hitting at the level that you would like. And Brumbaugh beat Pompey out straight up for the shortstop role there in the fall. So if you're really trying to not overreact to these first 4 weeks of the season, you know, Brumbaugh's really got to start kind of delivering a little bit. I know he's a freshman. I know he's a glove first guy, but there's very few things that would keep a glove like that out of the lineup. And hitting 156 with 13 Ks and 50 at-bats is pretty close to that, striking out about 26% of the time. But I think for Arkansas, they just need to get their horses going. That's kind of my phrase with them. Arkansas needs to get their horses going. For the pitching matchup that I'm most excited about, it's got to be that Saturday role, as Carson Fisher's been really, really great. And then Valanciunas for Mississippi State's been really, really great. It's another kind of Saturday one. I think they got to figure out some of the bullpen stuff, too, for Arkansas. I know that they have a lot of big-name guys. There's still a lot of guys that are just fighting for innings. But that's the one that I think you really got to kind of figure out is you need an identity for this pitching staff. And I feel like as the season's kind of gone on, I know Arkansas figured it out very, very late last year in May, but they had 5-6 guys that they could roll through. I'm really kind of excited to see what they do from a staff standpoint. Lineup-wise, for me, it's Aiden Teal. I know his brother just pulled a hammy in the World Baseball Classic, but Aiden Teal, I think, is the cog in the machine, if you will, for this Mississippi State lineup. He kind of takes it from an A- to an A+ lineup. And then for Arkansas, I think it's Micah New. If he can be competitive, have competitive ABs, really pound the ball like we've seen at times, and not have so many strikeouts, I think that that's the one where you really kind of take a next step up with this lineup. He's down there near the bottom, so he's probably seeing more fastballs as he hit 7th on Tuesday. But I think for me, it's can Arkansas kind of figure it out and get an identity. Gris is going with Mississippi State. I am going with Arkansas. I think it's been a house of horrors up there in Fayetteville. Can they finally get that monkey off the back? Andrew is going Mississippi State over Arkansas. So me, as the resident Mississippi State guy, is the only one picking against them. So that's kind of ironic. But I think it's going to be a really, really competitive series by the numbers. College Baseball Insiders has it as a 57% Arkansas, 42.6% Mississippi State. Again, we got great baseball lineups. We got baseball-specific ones. The quintessential SEC matchup in Mississippi State and Arkansas. I know that Arkansas has only been in the SEC since the early 90s, but this just feels quintessentially Arkansas or SEC. Let's move on to another quintessentially SEC series. The Georgia Bulldogs will get their first real test against a high-quality opponent versus the Tennessee Volunteers. It's an exciting one. It's going to be at Foley. So Tennessee fans, for as much as they like to give, or I guess for as much as Tennessee people like to give Lindsey Nelson a bunch of crap for how small the lineup is, Foley is one. If you'll go on the stadium for Foley Field for College Baseball Insiders, it is 314 down the right field line. As I get these stats pulled up, I'm really excited to kind of just get vibes at Foley Field. I know that sounds really weird to say before we dive into the matchups, but Georgia, they've played a ton at home, but they've had some kind of weird weather. As I get their schedule pulled up, they have not left the state of Georgia and only played one true road game, but they haven't really had any of these marquee matchups. The only common opponent is Wright State. Both teams took 2 of 3 from them. Georgia dominated them while Tennessee kind of needed a walk-off before they lost on Saturday. Georgia's fit the billing for me as what they should have done, if not a little bit more. They're 15-3, but they haven't lost any series. They've lost to midweek, which, again, everybody kind of loses midweeks, if you will. Colby Branch has been hitting the absolute cover off the ball. Dan Jackson already has 14 home runs in SEC. Brennan Hudson has double-digit home runs at 10. Michael O'Shaughnessy's hit 4 of them, too, as well. I think for me, I'm just really excited to see with this Georgia lineup and all these Georgia transfers that came in, what they do against high-quality pitching. Because Tennessee's going to run out a really, really good Friday night guy in Tegan Coons. They're going to get Landon Mack behind him on Saturday, who's a guy that I really, really liked what I saw against a really high-quality team in Arizona State. He probably pitched the best against Arizona State. And then Evan Blanco on Sunday. I mean, that's 3 dudes behind him that, are really going to push the envelope for this Georgia lineup. Georgia struck out 118 times early on. They do lead the league in home runs at 61. And the next closest is 44 with Vanderbilt. So they've been tearing the absolute cover off the ball. They have 199 RBIs, so they lead the SEC in RBIs. They are 29th in hitting, according to College Baseball Insiders. They're second in hitting, 9th in pitching. But again, they haven't really played anybody. I think for me, does Tennessee learn how to win in a different way? They are hitting 14th in the SEC right now at 283. They've only hit 25 home runs. So for reference, Dan Jackson's only hit 10 less than them. They're down there with Kentucky and Oklahoma, which is really kind of a weird Tennessee team, if you will, because they've been, first off, they played a ton of games at Lindsey Nelson and the Dale and KPP, play a lot bigger. And, I mean, the Tennessee teams that we've seen in the past really bang the ball around the yard. But this Tennessee team, I think the lineup has more, I guess, double-the-double stuff, less strikeout stuff. I know Jay Abernathy struck out a ton early on, but I think he's one that they can really kind of get going. Does Levi Clark kind of turn that corner? What do they do with Garrett Wright out in center field? Is Jay Abernathy's probably their most dynamic hitter? But it'll be really, really interesting for me at least, because it feels like, and again, when Ike Irish was at Auburn, that second year where they were kind of a little bit better, it was Ike Irish and everybody else. Yes, they had Cooper McMurray. Yes, they had some of these other guys they could swipe in. But it feels like it's Henry Ford and everybody else. Henry Ford's going to go out there and give you a ton of hits. He's going to bang the ball around the yard. And then it's who steps up from those other 8 ones. I could almost throw Blaine Brown in there. Blaine Brown's been really, really good for them so far. So it's Blaine Brown and Henry Ford. And then for me, it's what can the other 7 guys do? I think that's the thing with Tennessee is when they've looked really good, the lineup's had a ton of depth and it turns over fast. And you get Blaine Brown and Henry Ford up there again. They're hitting tons in really, really quick ones. And then there's other times where I felt like they just disappear. And it's like, okay, Henry Ford hasn't been up in 3 or 4 innings or 2 or 3 innings. It kind of drags near the bottom. I think there's a lot of guys in there that I think got to grind out ABs a little bit better than they have. Manny Marin's another guy. I know that his average is up a little bit higher. He's had a really good past week. Can he kind of continue it, or was it the stuff that we saw the first 2 weeks? It's going to be a really, I know I keep saying it, intriguing series. All these series are intriguing. But for me, the 2 things that I'm most worried about, or most, I guess, intrigued by, is Georgia's lineup against this really deep, top-heavy Tennessee rotation, Can they chase them early and get Tennessee into that bullpen? And then can Tennessee do enough offensively with those arms against Georgia's lineup? The metrics love Georgia. So that is the thing with these insider stuff is Georgia really hasn't played anybody half worth a damn. I know that Tennessee really, they had that one weekend. They both played Wright State. Georgia looked better than Wright State. College Baseball Insiders projects it as a 73.3 versus Tennessee at 26.2. Andrew has Georgia over Tennessee. I have Georgia over Tennessee. Gris has Georgia, so it's a clean Georgia sweep. Not sweep because I almost picked him to sweep. I think that this is one where if you're Tennessee, you need to remember that this is a road series and that you're supposed to lose road series as long as you don't get swept. But, I mean, this could feel like I know that everybody keeps comparing Josh Elander to Michael Early last year. This Tennessee lineup doesn't have the depth that the A&M lineup did, but they also didn't have the injuries that they did. But much like that one, I think for Tennessee, you need to remember that Josh Elander is a first-year coach. You need to make decisions that he has a little bit easier, I know that like pitching, I think is a big one for me, when to kind of go in and get the hooks out of guys, how long you want to go with guys. I know that was the one thing with Michael Early, when to pinch hit, when to steal, when to do other stuff. So if you can make it as easy as you can on Josh Elander, limit kind of how many decisions he has to make, it's less chances that he has at making a wrong decision. Again, I think Elander's a fantastic coach. It's just this isn't a Tennessee team of past. At the halfway point here, wanted to give a shout out to our people at Home Field Apparel.
Before we get back to the action, we've got to tell you about the best gear in college sports. The place to go is Home Field Apparel. Check out the Diamond Classics collection, high-quality throwback jerseys for your favorite team. From the Arkansas Razorbacks to the Vanderbilt Commodores, Home Field has you covered. Home Field's the only apparel partner of College Baseball Central. Gear up for game day by visiting homefieldapparel.com.
Our next matchup takes us up to Columbia as the Auburn Tigers will take on the Missouri Tigers. College Baseball Insiders actually has Missouri as a slight favorite. Again, these are not subjective at all. These are all based on numbers. And for as bad as everybody likes to say that Missouri is and how doom and gloom, they've taken care of business. They're 15-2. I know that everybody's going to say like, oh, well, they didn't do this against this team. Well, no one did. Like, I'm not going to sit here and say like that, Missouri's strength of schedule at 244 is good, but last year they were 8-8 at this time, and they weren't playing murderer's row last year either. They're 73rd in fielding, they're 45th in pitching, they're 19th in hitting. They had a come from behind win when they were 9-1. It's a different Missouri team in years past, but Auburn is probably the best team in the SEC, right up there with Mississippi State, Texas, and I'd even put A&M into there. I think that the depth that they have from a lineup standpoint, the arms that they've been able to run out from Butch Thompson, I mean, it is phenomenal. I think Jake Marciano is probably the best pitcher in the SEC. I know that all those Texas guys will talk about him. I know Liam Peterson's probably the boom bust, but Marciano's got an ERA of 1.23 and a batting average of 160. Andres Alvarez behind him has a batting average of 217 at 1.93 ERA. Their K numbers are ridiculous as Marciano's is 35 and 22 innings. Petrovic is another guy at 237. He's the quote-unquote bad pitcher out of them. And that doesn't even include some of the bullpen arms. Like Drew Whalen's already thrown 10 innings. Jackson Sanders has been their midweek guy. He's been absolutely lights out for him too. I think for me, it's Missouri's been a really, really great story, but Auburn's flying super, super under the radar. I know that in years past, we would have said that the Missouri sweep's almost a guaranteed one. This does not feel like a guaranteed one. I think, a few years ago, Missouri got Florida during week one where they swept them. I mean, Taylor Stadium's not an easy place to play for all the wrong reasons. I mean, there's some really, really rowdy parks. And unfortunately, that is not Taylor Park or Taylor Stadium. Sorry about that. My mic dropped. The good news is, I know I mentioned the weather. You always kind of play roulette early on with these games. It's 30 degrees right now in Columbia, Missouri. It's going to be 28 come Monday morning. It's going to drop Sunday night, get a chance of a snow. But Friday it's 53, Saturday it's 63, and Sunday during game time it's going to be really, really great weather. So Auburn's going to probably get the biggest blessing, I think, for them. For Missouri, I think it's can they continue to hit at the rate that they have. Tyler Makin's hitting 476 for them. It started all 17 games. They've had some really, really great ABs from some guys that you wouldn't expect them to get great ABs from. Chris Patterson's, who's been a mainstay there. Pierre Seals is another guy. It's can they kind of continue this hot streak? They love to bunt. They love to steal. As they have, Tyler Macon stolen 6 bases for them. Can they take that next step up under Carrick? Because I know a lot of people, like when I tweet about how good Missouri's doing, they said, "Oh yeah, it's Missouri. Like, chill out." If they can steal one or be competitive, I think everybody in the SEC is going to raise an eyebrow. I think it's going to be a little bit too much to kind of overcome, as Auburn's pitching is 3rd in the nation. It's the most underrated staff in the country, as Texas kind of gets a lot of those headlines. I think Auburn's got a discussion to be right up there with them. Let's see what everybody went in the pick'ems. Yep, everybody went Auburn. I will say this. Hopefully, Missouri kind of gives me enough confidence to pick a series with them. I think that one like this could go a really, really long way. Our next series sees the LSU Tigers go up to Vanderbilt to take on the Commodores. I'm calling this one the Doom and Gloom series, as these are two teams that are kind of trending in very similar directions, for better or for worse. I actually have Vandy as my 16th SEC team, as it seems like every time they play somebody with even half of a pulse, they immediately just shell up. And everybody's going to point to some of the batting averages, but they're doing the Texas Tech method, where anytime they play somebody good, they get absolutely exposed, and then they go and dominate these inferior teams at a rate that they probably should be doing. But, I mean, if you think about it, they went 1-2 in Arlington and got run-ruled by Oklahoma State. They turn around, get 0-3 against a not very good Arizona team, a not very good Irvine team compared to years past. They've lost to Central Arkansas in midweek. North Dakota State took a Sunday one from them. I mean, for as bad as LSU's been and for as bad as everybody's wanted to hit the panic button on LSU, I feel like that's Vandy. I mean, we thought that this was going to be well, first off, I know that they're second in the SEC in home runs, but they don't really have a ton of guys that are going to hit home runs. I mean, you have to feel like this power surge of Holcomb, Brody Johnston, even Logan Johnson to some extent. Mancini has 4. Like, that's not going to continue in SEC play. They're not going to be as homer heavy. Or, I mean, if they are, like, they're hitting 318 in the SEC. They've hit 44 home runs. They're kind of at the top end. But, again, I worry about where this team's going to score home runs or score runs when it's not playing these midweek inferior opponents. Because again, as bad as LSU's staff has kind of been, I know Casey Evans has that ERA of 4.66. He's run into some of those long balls. But Cooper Moore's really good. William Schmidt's been really good. I know that they got to figure out a ton of the stuff with the bullpen. But if you think about it, Guidry's been pretty good for them. I think Cowan's kind of really struggled. I think he's too good to be pitching the way that he is. But, I mean, theoretically, there's been plenty of teams that have gone to Omaha with 5 pitchers. So if you get Cooper Moore, William Schmidt, Case Evans all throw good starts, give Maverick Rizzi on a Saturday to stretch him out, you get 9 outs, you get Guidry. I mean, this isn't as bad of a staff as everybody's making it out to be. It's not as deep as they've had in years past. I think for me, the biggest thing is the clutch hitting for LSU. That's been the biggest cause of concern. I have watched, for better or for worse, every LSU midweek live that I have not been to a game, so I've seen the last 3. I've watched them a ton on Sunday, and then I've watched every single one of their games on Wheels, so I feel pretty confident saying this about LSU. It feels like a tale of two teams. The LSU that we saw in Jacksonville was just phenomenal. They were competitive. They took high-quality at-bats. They were Barry Bonds spitting on balls that were close. And then you watched them against UL, watched them against Northeastern on Monday. You watched them, I would even say, I know that they won against Creighton, but they were not taking very competitive ABs early. There's a lot of guys here. Again, they're going to get Stanfield back. So this is going to fix a lot of their kind of issues, if you will. Jakes Brown's been phenomenal at 413 batting average, 9 homers. He's not striking out that much. Curiel right behind him at 329, just the quietest, most consistent guy. And then from there, they need to have some of these guys step up, whether it's Braun, Aaron Beatty. I know Caraway's taken some really kind of high-quality ABs at times. Milam at 250. I think that group of guys, those 4, are too talented for the ABs that they're taking at the plate. And I know Milam caught a lot of heat for saying he was the most overrated player. I think he's the at-bats that him, Aaron Beatty, Caraway take, and even Dardar to some extent, I think those guys have just too much talent for the ABs that they have. I mean, waving at sliders out of the zone, just being too aggressive at the plate, chasing the moment instead of living in the moment. I think that once LSU, and here's the scary thing, is for as bad as everybody's wanted LSU to be, they're 13-5. Everybody's saying they shouldn't be ranked. They're doing all this with all these guys just pressing too much. Once they get Caraway going, once they get Milam going, once they get Aaron Beatty going, this is an LSU team that, has the lineup to win the national championship again. Again, are they likely going to win the national championship again? Law of averages says probably not. But, the lineup that they have, I feel like it's so many guys that you think should be better than they are. And that's the thing with me is we talked about it with Mississippi State where they've had so many guys where it's a fight at the bat rack. I feel like LSU's kind of had the opposite. It feels like they've given a ton of opportunities for guys to kind of step up, win jobs, and they just haven't at all. It's a very open competition at second base. Dardar's played there. Reeves has played there. You don't know what they're going to do as other guys can kind of play second base. And then left field. Again, that's going to be Stanfield, but the DH spot isn't going to be Stanfield. And that's their 3 kind of holes, if you will, is one, I think Aaron Beatty's better than Cerna. I think that they're giving Cerna opportunities. Both of those guys, though, I know that Aaron Beatty's a sophomore, but I feel like has freshman moments at times. And Cerna has his freshman moments. So I don't think that that's very much of a competition. But it's DH, second base, and it's left field. I think if LSU can kind of get that stuff figured out, they can kind of trust Jay Johnson a little bit. I think that this is one where this team kind of gets rolling. The College Baseball Insiders have LSU as a slight underdog at 47.4. I have LSU winning. Andrew has LSU sweeping. Interesting. And then Gris has LSU. I should say this, and this is completely unrelated. It's a completely different sport. But Vanderbilt LSU football was the beginning of the end of the LSU football season. That was where everybody kind of really perked their heads up. And then A&M a week later really kind of killed them. Is that what we are prepared to see up in Nashville? Is LSU kind of the beginning of the end where everybody really kind of checks out on them and from a national standpoint? I don't think so. I have LSU winning this series. I think that they win it pretty handily. Obviously, it's really tough with the way that Case Evans has been pitching on Friday night to predict a sweep. But I would say almost one of these might be our run roll. I think LSU's lineup figures it out. Give me LSU big. Our next series has the Ole Miss Rebels returning to Texas again to face the Texas Longhorns. The Texas Longhorns sit as the last undefeated team in the SEC. They won their first test, in my mind, against Texas State on the road in that midweek. They have the 4th highest average at 340. They have hit 30 home runs. Their pitching is best in the SEC. 2 shutouts, 34 innings pitched. That is good for least in the SEC. Actually, no, A&M has the least in the SEC. Opponent's batting average of 1.88. Again, good for best in the SEC. We have this one going as a 40% sweep to the Horns, 98% to win the series, 75 to win Friday night with Ruger-Riojas. I think for me, it's that Texas feels like just a class above this tier of SEC that Ole Miss is in. I feel like they're kind of in that middle bottom where they're not having a disappointing season by any stretch of the imagination, as they've only had that one weekend back in Houston. But when you watched them take BP, take in and out, and play on Saturday, and then you watch Texas come in behind them, these feel like two teams just in different classes, in my opinion. I think if Ole Miss steals a game, you have to feel like they are going to be very, very happy with that. And I think the game that they have to steal is that Ruger-Riojas versus Hunter Elliott start. I mean, Hunter Elliott's at a .48. He's only thrown 18 innings pitched, only 1 run allowed. It was actually the one that I got to see in in Houston. Sorry, that's Cade Townsend. Hold on, back up. Cade Townsend's been their best guy in that Saturday. We're all 4 innings, 18 pitches, .52 or .15 batting average. Elliott behind him at 366 in 19 innings has an ERA rate under 2. And then Will Libbert on Sunday has been their guy. I think for me, again, it's got to be Hunter Elliott. You'd feel like Cade Townsend can't keep pitching the way that he's pitching for good or bad. And then for Texas, it's what do they do behind Ruger-Riojas? Fuentes has been on cruise control. I know he had kind of a little bit of a rough outing on Sunday. Luke Harrison's been their quote-unquote worst starter at 306. But, I mean, they have Crossland and Cozart right behind them, both dominating. I think the thing for me, and I'm not sure that I'll learn it this week against Ole Miss, but what happens when Texas gets down early? Because it feels like even in the games that Texas has been close, that they've been up, the team's gotten back in it, and then they've responded. Like Texas State in the midweek. They were up 7-3, home run, Texas immediately responds. We know how this team responds. I think for me, it's can they, as a lineup, take those really good veteran approaches of chipping away, making it 5-1, then 5-2, then 5-3, and then you get the big hit. That was the one thing that I thought that the Texas lineup was really, really good at last year, was chipping away when they got down early. I felt like no lead was too big, but they could always kind of chip away. Obviously, it's a lot of the same guys off of last year's team, but I think that that's the one thing that I really want to learn about Texas is how they kind of go in and chip away, if you will. I mean, Aiden Robbins has been every bit as advertised. Timo Becerra has been every bit as advertised. I think if you would have told me at the beginning of the season that Aiden Robbins, Timo Becerra, Casey Borba, and Ethan Mendoza would be the Longhorns' top power hitters, I would say that this is probably a team that struggles to score runs. And that is not the case for this Texas Longhorns lineup at all. Timo Becerra has been probably their best power hitter. Aiden Robbins looks like thick. Like when I remember seeing him in the fall, and it's not to say that I wasn't impressed with his body, if you will, but he looked like a good, high-quality center fielder. And now he looks like a middle-of-the-order guy that can just bang the ball around the yard. I know that he has only 6 home runs. It feels like he should have even more. Borba's taking Borba bombs. Pack, again, we've talked about it with other guys. When's he going to have that kind of freshman moment, if you will? That was always kind of the plan, I think, in the back of my head when I was setting up the lineup, is that if Pack can produce in these first 4 weeks and he starts in SEC play, that'll be really, really, really dangerous. The issue is, and I say issue because it's a good problem to have, is I don't think they had Ashton Larson taking the ABs that they've had and playing as good as he is in the field. Jonah Williams has only started 8 games for them, and it'll be really interesting to see kind of what they do with this lineup because it feels like they have 5 guys for 3 spots, as Livingston's done really, really good out of that DH role. But Robbins isn't going to get benched. Pack has been playing good enough to stay in the lineup. So what do they do with that Larson, Jonah, Livingston kind of trio? I think it'll be Larson as the DH and Jonah in right. But again, it's just an embarrassment of riches for this Texas Longhorns team. Again, we're talking about very, very nitpicky stuff. We're talking about no one at LSU separating themselves in that left field role or the DH role. Texas has the exact opposite problem. I think Texas rolls. I picked Texas in a sweep. Everybody picked Texas. Let me just double check to verify. Yep, Andrew picked him in a sweep. Gris picked him in a sweep. No one's really given the Rebs the chance. Again, I think that this Texas, I really am trying to imagine the team that beats Texas, and it's one that can go toe-to-toe with the rotation. All three ones. It's one that has a deep bullpen. It's Auburn. It's somebody that can hit home runs or luck into home runs when they're on the road. I should say this. Ole Miss has a really, really good lineup for power guys. Tristan Bassetta's hitting over 400. Bull Furnace, Judd Udemark, Federico, I think, is another guy that can kind of come around here in a little bit. But that's the one for me. And I think if Ole Miss needs to keep it close, they're going to have to really rely on the long ball a ton. My guys to watch for are Timo Becerra. Can he kind of continue the tear that he's been on once it goes into SEC play? Luke Harrison in that Saturday role. It's Townsend versus Harrison. It's one of three going against 3 of 3, and Luke Harrison's not bad. But if Texas can steal that Luke Harrison start, I mean, they're going to win with Atlantis. That Ruger at 96, 97, spinning his changeup. You feel really, really good about them. From a lineup standpoint, I'm going with Tristan Bassetta for Ole Miss. But again, I think that the Horns roll here. Our final matchup, the Florida Gators will go to South Carolina to take on those Gamecocks at Founders Park. For me, this feels like one where every part of me says pick Florida, pick Florida, pick Florida. But just when you think that you have Florida the last 3 years, just when you think that they have it figured out, and they're going to go in and take care of business, they lose these stupid games that they shouldn't. I'm thinking about Missouri, thinking about last weekend against High Point. I'm thinking about all those midweeks when they went to Omaha a few years ago. I'm thinking about that Coastal Regional where you thought maybe Florida was going to turn a corner and they were going to be the ones that kind of the underrated, and it didn't happen. I think for me, every part of me is like there's no chance South Carolina has for all the nonsense that this team has put up with. But again, I am guilty of box score watching South Carolina or wheels watching South Carolina and not really grasping what's going on. But for as bad and as doom and gloomy as everybody has been on South Carolina, it seems like every time they lose, it's the biggest deal in the world. They really don't have that terrible of a resume. I mean, yes, they lost to Clemson after winning on Friday night, but Clemson's a top 10 team. Yes, they lost to Army on Friday night, but weird stuff happens. Florida lost on Friday night. Yes, they didn't sweep Northern Kentucky, but I mean, Vandy hasn't swept every single one. Yes, they've lost midweeks. People have lost midweeks. They sit at 12-6, but at the end of the day, they've won 3 of their 4 weekend series. Every single one outside of Clemson, which again, there aren't going to be very many teams that beat Clemson in a weekend series. I don't think South Carolina is as terrible as they were last year. I don't think they're as terrible as people are kind of giving them credit for. But you have to feel like it's going to be a bounce-back weekend for Florida in every sense of the word. And it might be such a bounce-back weekend that Florida just assumes that they're going to bounce back. That, Aiden King's going to go out and shove and be dominant. I know that he didn't pitch terribly, but, he gets chased early in the 4th. The fielding for Florida, I think, has got to be better. They're a below-average fielding team. They're an above-average hitting team, but they really don't hit home runs and bang the ball around the yard Like, they don't have a Cags. They don't have a Wyatt Langford in this lineup. Yes, they have Lawson at 9 home runs. I have to feel like, well, outside of him, they don't have a guy hitting over 3. I think that it's a veteran lineup that has exciting ways to win games, and they feel like one of the deeper lineups at 1 through 9 from a gap-to-gap double, quality ABs, tough guys get out, not a homer standpoint. I think that for me, of all the series that I picked, this is the one that I really kind of struggled with, because I think I could see South Carolina taking 2 of 3. They are at home. My guys, as we're kind of getting up on that hour, so I don't want to run you over into the Rydell report. It's Talamash LaCroix from South Carolina. For Florida, it is Jacob Kendall. He's hitting 200. He's had some really, really clutch ABs. I think he kind of takes that next step forward in SEC play. Pitching lineup I'm most excited about. I'm really excited to see the Stone man, Brandon Stone. He's had some really kind of good outings for the Gamecocks. He's been their best pitcher without a doubt, but it's really curious. Let me see when they threw him last week, because again, like I said, I am kind of a victim of their scoreboard watching and not really digesting. So let me double check and see who they're going. You will have to forgive me that I don't have every single pitching rotation lined up, but this is a good plug for the weekend rotation. It is the new home of every single pitcher, so we're retweeting every single starting pitcher's stuff. So when South Carolina comes out with that graphic, it says Brandon Stone starting on, let me see. You'll have to excuse me as he pitched on the 7th, which was a Saturday. Ooh. Brandon Stone versus a King Musty. High thing that he's going on. I'm actually excited for this. But that is all that we have time for. Our Pick'em graphic will be coming out Friday morning with all of our stuff. We're going to be on location at a few of these sites. It's going to be an exciting weekend. Nick, hopefully he will be back Monday. If not, it'll likely be Chris or Andrew sliding in. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. We will see you back here.